You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to another Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell, Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you along as we preview the Colts showdown with the Baltimore Ravens. 1984 ringing true this week. The vitriol still strong from our friends over there. The
Colts
should
show up. They should get to the stadium in Mayflower.
That would be great if you just did that every time. That would be
from the team hotel
trolling
to the stadium. Yes.
I would love it. Absolutely love it. And because I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in outside of Philadelphia. For those who have listened to this podcast, know that well. But that's like just grinding at somebody else is very much a Northeastern. Like we don't bat an eye at it. Out here in the Midwest, it's a little bit different. People are a little bit more friendly for the most part, but up there that's normal, and I love it. I love going back and forth like that.
I just like to remind them that Baltimore stole Cleveland's franchise.
Exactly.
So
yeah. So yeah, take that. Yeah, what goes around comes around, folks. So, and Baltimore should be over it right by now anyway. They have two Super Bowls in the last since 2000. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Anyway,
but again, it's still the old guard there that will never change.
Oh, yeah.
And for as much as he can, Jim Irsay he always reaches back to Baltimore. He does. Mm-hmm. It's just that there are some people, like if Johnny Unitas was still with us, he'd be giving Jimmy the middle finger because he would never get over it. But a lot of the, Raymond Berry, he was like he flipped the coin at the AFC Championship game, mm-hmm. I think back in 2006. But there are guys, and you just realize some guys are never going to get, I won't say over it, get past it. And you deal with it.
There are things that some guys never get over. And yeah, we were just talking about one of those just briefly. And we won't get into all that.
You're not going to mention his name,
No,
are you?
I'm not going to get into that. But I was just saying there was something else that we were talking about those in a very similar vein that some people on this podcast might already know what I'm referring to, but we're not going to talk about it. Like I said, we're going to move on. And we actually move on by starting in the past, where the Colts have beaten the Houston Texans this past week, 31-20. A win at long last. The Colts' first win since beating the Las Vegas Raiders in Jeff Saturday's coaching debut last year in whenever that was, November. All the dates blur together. I believe it was November. There were like 7 or 8 games after that.
I was going to tee that up as the world's easiest trivia question, but yeah. I had decided not to. Okay. Pretty easy.
Yes.
Who was the last head coach to win for the Colts?
It was Jeff Saturday. Silly. Yes, exactly. But yeah, the Colts started off fast. They had a great drive with Anthony Richardson, had an 18-yard touchdown run. It was beautiful, and he's had a quick change with a strip sack from Samson Ebukam, Dio Odangbo. Kwity Paye recovered it, and another Anthony Richardson touchdown run. Boom, boom, just like that. 2 15-plus yard touchdown runs from Richardson. Looked like everything was going well. But then things ground to a little bit of a halt for a little while as Anthony Richardson self-reported concussion symptoms, was taken inside the medical tent, tested, failed the concussion test, which means that he is now in the NFL's concussion protocol. Chap, the concussion protocol, especially for quarterbacks, has been just under the microscope since it was implemented, but especially since last year with everything that happened with Tua Tagovailoa, with his concussions that were he was not taken off the field immediately when he was hit, when there were some signs out there that there were issues. But with Richardson, he played for 2 series, went 2 3-and-outs, and then self-reported his conditions. And things this week have not looked overly promising so far as we record this podcast on Thursday for a potential Richardson return.
Yeah, again, him not practicing today is not a good sign.
Right, no practice Wednesday or Thursday.
Just
he's
because
out there.
He's out there watching, but
right.
It's just in general, it's what we've seen with concussions, and they're all different. Please keep that in mind. But generally, they don't practice Wednesday, and then they go through non-contact on Thursday, which quarterbacks are anyway, and then Friday they're out there without their red jersey, and then they're cleared on Saturday if you can get through that. Not practicing today is not a great sign. We'll see. He still has time. I just can't imagine the Colts or any team hurrying a guy through. They don't do that. If nothing else, they go.
I don't even think it's possible to hurry him through it.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. You can't give him a cheat sheet on how he deals with his neurologist and all that. So I think all signs point towards Gardner Minshew practicing. One thing that was brought up, and I think it's valid, is that no one with the team or the independent neurologist saw anything with Richardson in the game. He did get hit pretty good, but what it was his head slamming against the ground.
Right.
And normally, people look at the doctors look at this to kind of be cautious. If that didn't happen, both he and Ryan Kelly self-reported, and whatever that is, who knows? Headache, dizziness, who knows? So we'll see where this goes. And I did a story early in the week on this, is how so many of these are different. And I went back and looked from 2016. 26 Colts have had concussions in what I would call just a 7-day week. You get a concussion on Sunday, then you play the next Sunday. Not Thursday, not the bye week, but 26. Only 3 players have played the next game. I think it was Xavier Rhodes, Quentin Nelson, and he's just different, and Marlon Mack, a running back. So it doesn't look good, and maybe this will take any question from the Colts out of their hands. Is, let's say he clears on Saturday, do you play him, or do you think no? Let's kind of be cautious and give him an extra week, but that may not be a decision anyway if he doesn't pass protocol.
I think that's an interesting topic to discuss. Does he, Matt? So I'd ask your opinion of it, but before I share mine. But if he does clear concussion protocol on Saturday, because that is possible now. Like what you need is a limited participation practice, and technically, like the main road back is limited participation practice, full participation practice, then clearance by an independent neurologist. There is another path, sort of, that on a Friday you can have a limited participant in practice. Then on Saturday you go through some kind of a physical I forget the word, but that there is a path forward that you can have some kind of a test.
I think they put Zaire out there and hit him a couple times.
Exactly.
And then you see if he has any residuals.
Right. Yeah, it has to be Zaire, and it's not going to be like Josh Downs or something like that,
right.
So, but
there is a path.
But yeah, there is a path for him to be cleared by an independent neurologist if there's only one limited participation practice on Friday. So I'll say that before I pose the question then to you, Matt. If he is cleared by the independent neurologist, do you think it would be wise to keep him back? Do you think there's an argument to be had that way? Or do you not see an argument that way and say if he's cleared, play him?
I mean, I know the guy's been, even though he's not been out in the field and getting reps, he's still been, looking at film and probably studying up for the game. But my gut feeling, or what I would err on that would be, this isn't a veteran quarterback who's been doing this for 3 or 4 years or how long, and who can just roll out of bed and be fine without practice and be fine for games. He's still a rookie, still developing, still young. My gut would be to just go ahead and hold him back for the week.
Yeah, and I completely get that, and I understand the thought process behind it. And actually, just this week, if you're in Central Indiana, I encourage you to watch our Football Friday night, this Friday night on Fox 59, 10:35, because I'm going to be talking to Will Carroll. He is at Injury Expert on Twitter. He's written for various publications over the years, and is working right now with FanBuzz. And he has an article out today that is talking about concussion specifically, and is kind of cropping up because of this issue with Anthony Richardson. And Will is not a doctor, but he has been around doctors for a very long time, and he knows the lingo, and he knows the stats, or he knows the science behind it. So he's done a lot in terms of relating medical science to the fan over the years. That's really what he's been special in doing. And so I'm going to ask him some of these questions and break it down with him. And one of the main questions that I think I have to ask is there more risk for a second concussion if somebody is cleared, like immediately? Or does it benefit you to, even if you're cleared, have another week, have another 2 weeks? Like, is there any studies that have dove into that question? Because that is the question that the Colts have to answer right now, like we're talking about. You would think maybe another week with an arm injury or with a hamstring, always with a hamstring, you get another week, that's going to be a lot better for a torn hamstring. As Will always says, a sprain is a tear, a strain is a tear. So if it's just a sprained hamstring, another week would behoove you just to make it heal a little bit better. But the hamstring is not the brain. It's a very different part of the body, and that sounds like a really stupid thing to say. But so that's, like I said, that's something that I'm going to have to ask him, like how much rest is good, how much rest is beneficial. Is more rest, like it is for a hamstring, beneficial for the brain? So like I said, encourage everyone out there to listen to us Football Friday night, Fox 59, 10:35 this week if you're listening. And we're going to have that story up online as well, fox59.com, after it's all said and done. So I think that's a discussion that has to be had. If there is any type of research, chap, that says that another week would be beneficial to keeping him healthy for the long term, then another week put Gardner out there. And I think the Colts would love to see what Richardson could do against the Baltimore defense, because this could be one of the toughest defenses he faces all year. You want to get him those challenges in the NFL, but if it benefits him in the long term not to be out there, I think you take the long-term view instead of the short-term view.
Yeah, again, the brain isn't the same as your hamstring, but obviously more time is better. It just is. And once you have one concussion, you're more susceptible to another one. So, but like you said, how much time do you need? How much is enough? How much is too much? Nothing's too much, but how much is enough? Another week has to help in different injuries. But Zach Moss, he practiced limited the first week, but he wasn't quite ready. Now, was that the conditioning or was that the arm? Probably conditioning, maybe. Mm-hmm. But it's a really good question. I hope Will's got some information, stats. I'm not sure how you have stats on it, except how long guys have been out and did it. Then how do you know it was beneficial? I don't know. But you just don't mess with head injuries. You just, goodness gracious, I was here for the Austin Collie season, and it was scary. It was frightening when you see a guy frozen on the ground. Mm-hmm. It's just, and he still would not retire. He wouldn't. He people say, isn't that enough protection from himself? And that's where the team has to protect the player from himself. But I'll be interested to see what Will has to say and see how we get this going forward. Ryan Kelly, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, had a concussion, and he missed the last 5 games. Right. They put him on IR. Mm-hmm. So you just don't know. And then again, you get that, and then you get Ogletree, who went through. He was cleared, mm-hmm. So he could have played. Yeah. But I wonder I'm guessing they kind of kept his long-term health into the decision, and he didn't play.
Right. So Matt, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say one thing that I know. Ogletree, less than a week, clears the concussion protocol. Just every player is different. Every situation is different. This isn't apples to apples comparison, but we had Shaq Leonard suffer a concussion back on, I think, August the 16th in the joint practice against the Bears. Right. He did not clear concussion protocol until September the 7th, so about 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So you have Ogletree, less than a week. It takes Shaq 3 weeks. A little different. One's in season, one's not, but still, that just shows you different injury, different players. It's going to mean something different for everybody.
And that's one of the confusing things about concussions and head injuries as well. From our reporter on site at Colts practice, no Ryan Kelly, no Quentin Nelson either. He is barefoot watching the offensive line work out there.
Kelly is?
Q is.
Well, Q,
he does that like for games. He'll go out there barefoot and do like yoga out in the end zone before some games, get them all stretched out. Kudos to our videographer Brett Bensley for that report from Colts practice. As we tape this podcast, he's out there getting the lowdown. But like the medical science has come far in terms of concussions, but there should be a push to have it just go further, because with the Richardson case, like he gets this hit, and I saw the hit live. I was like, that's a pretty big hit to the head, but he pops right up and he puts his arms up in the air. He's celebrating with his teammates, and he's obviously coming out for the next 2 drives. So like right now, they have spotters, the NFL does, to look for concussion symptoms. But if he pops up and he raises his hands, it's not just the hit. Like they're not looking for hits. Are the spotters? They're looking for symptoms from the players. So you get up and you stumble. Right. So you get up and you're
a stumble, and then they called it a back injury.
And right. There is a problem with that, and I think that's separate from what we saw with Richardson, where there wasn't any clear signs that were exhibited out on the field. So there are steps to take. Maybe there is equipment or technology that can be put in helmets. But at the same time, like I said, like there's just it seems like the hardness of the hit is not always what determines a concussion. Like how you get a concussion is still something that's up for debate. So you can't just put something in a guy's helmet that measures the speed or the speed of the impact and say, oh, you have to come out for a play. I don't think the NFL wants to do that. They don't want to pull their best players out for no reason. But at the same time, they want to pull their players out if they are hurt and if they are concussed. So it's a line that the NFL is trying to tread right now. And like I said, this is stuff that I'm going to discuss with Will. So I encourage everyone to watch or to listen, to check us out online afterward, because he's going to know, because he did some research on this story, and he's going to have some more answers than I do right now.
Well, and we've seen in practice and during training camp how the players have the, whatever they're called, the blue shield on their pad on the top of the helmet. And I'd like, it'd be interesting to ask Will, is how much can you do with a helmet to protect the head inside? Because the concussion is from the sudden stop or whatever of the brain pounding against your skull.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't know what a helmet does to stop that from happening inside.
The brain still is moving.
The brain's still moving. So again, but it's all about trying to make an extremely violent sport safer. You're never going to make it safe.
Right.
So very interesting, and it's I think it's kind of good on one side that we have these discussions, because I think people just they get numb to what players go through, play after play after play. Offensive linemen, their heads get smacked every play, every play. I go back to, again, before the NFL really paid attention to these, Jeff Harrod, one of their all-time great linebackers, he took smelling salts on the field with him. Every other play he would take a sniff because he didn't know where the hell he was. Yeah. So, but I think they're doing as much as they can, but at some point I think there's only so much you can do. But hopefully for the best for Ryan and AR, and they get back out there as soon as it's healthy for them.
Yeah, and I think there's only so much we can discuss with this, and that's probably the extent of our knowledge on it for now. So we'll move on to some other topics. Gardner Minshew came in, led the Colts to a couple more first-half touchdowns, completed 19 of 23 passes, which is kind of what we saw from him in training camp. The dink and dunk game is strong with this one.
As Rick Venturi calls him, a singles hitter.
Very much.
And he is.
And you got to expect that. That's what it's going to be. Like we've talked the past couple of weeks, hoping to see some more downfield plays. We've asked Richardson about that. We've asked Steichen about that. But this week, if Gardner Minshew is out there and they go deep once, I think you'd have to be thrilled if you're a Colts fan.
The over-under on yards per attempt is probably 6.5.
Yep.
And I might take the under.
And they're going to have to get you could hope for some catch and runs, whether you get Downs or Pittman, over the middle, or Kylan Granson somewhere, to try to get them in space, because Minshew just doesn't have the elite arm talent that Richardson does to get the ball down the field, that we haven't even seen with Richardson really as much so far, because other teams have been taking it away. Let them try to make them dink and dunk. And Baltimore's a team that they try to blitz you. So if you get the right receiver in the right spot with a little bit of space, they can go now. Like we saw it with Jonathan Taylor in the Monday night game a couple years ago. We saw Pittman got hit on a deep play from you-know-who, throwing him the football. And there were a couple really good plays in that game for the Colts offense, but at the end of the game, it was the defense that kind of gave things up in the fourth quarter. We'll talk about that more in a second. But Zach Moss coming in for the Colts this past week was averaging 4.9 yards per carry, 18 carries, 88 yards, a touchdown. Matt, what does it say about the state of the Colts running back room? Also, that we are so grateful for Zach Moss.
When you've got Zach Moss in there, and you're like, wow, this guy has some toughness and a burst. Then and there were still some rather large holes that the offensive line opened up that they were not able to necessarily exploit for that home run hit. That you're just like, man, if Taylor was in there, I think he would have hit him.
He would have had 150 minimum.
So? Yep.
But not to be. And what was really odd about that game is only one running back took a snap on offense. He took 56 to 57. The other two guys, Deion Jackson and Jake Funk, they took 3 combined snaps on special teams.
Right.
That's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
I thought the same thing, too.
And I think the funny thing was Zach Moss came off for one play on offense, and lining up in the backfield next to Richardson or next to Minshew, whoever it was Isaiah McKenzie. Right. and they sent him in motion.
Right, and then there was nobody in the backfield.
Exactly. So that's what the Colts think about their running back room right now. It's Zach Moss or it's nothing right now. Sorry to Deion. That first week was just so brutal, and he has to earn coach's trust back again before they're going to let him out there.
I hope he gets a chance, but he might not.
But he has to earn it, like I said.
Right.
Like this is the NFL.
But you only earn it by playing, and it's a bad cycle. Chicken or egg. How do you earn it? Well, you got to play well, but you got to play. You got to earn it. it's going to be difficult.
Colts were much better on third down. They were 6 of 12. If you can go 50%, that's tremendous for a season.
What were the openers?
2 for 12 on third down
and 1 of 5.
1 of 5 on fourth down. So much, much better. 6 sacks, 9 quarterback hits from the defense against the Texans offensive line that was down 4 starters that they had projected in the preseason. So like I tweeted it out before the game, they have to feast. Like the defensive line has to feast. They did so. They get 6 sacks. It was really funny. I have a friend who's a betting man, and we were talking about this before the game. Like both Quiddy and DeForest were plus money to get 1 sack. So it was like over under 0.75 sacks. And I'm like, dude, just put money on both of them. You got to figure one of them is going to get a sack, and then you'll be plus on your bet. And he did that. He bet on both of them, Quiddy and DeForest. Quiddy had the sack at the beginning of the fourth quarter. DeForest got the sack on the last play of the game.
And why did he? Didn't they spike it? Or
they spiked it with like 2 seconds to go. That second to last play, they dropped 10. The Colts dropped 10 guys in coverage. DeForest was the only guy going against 5 offensive linemen. So you're like, daggum, this isn't going to happen. No, still, I'm plus money for the day. It's all good. But then they spike the ball. He gets another chance. They chases down C.J. Stroud, and we're celebrating together like we just won the World Series. It was fantastic.
And at the end of the season, when Buck has 9 or 10 sacks, no one cares that was simply a throwaway sack.
It was. No, it's fine. But it was a great moment for myself, for my friend specifically, who was the one who was actually putting money on it. Me just celebrating alongside with him. Some first from this past week, first win for Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. I guess it technically goes to a win for Richardson since he's just starting quarterback.
Gets a save.
There you go. Yeah. First career reception for tight end Will Mallory goes for 43 yards. Look at that. He was wide open. I could have got at least 30 on that if I
could have gone for 22.
There you go. Yeah, we'll give you that. But we were saying just a little bit ago, like Will Mallory, every time he's been in the lineup has been impressive, making nice catches, making solid gains. I mean, that play was easy because he was wide open. It was schemed up well. There was a breakdown in coverage for the Texans. But the other tight ends, Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree, I think they really have to be careful. I think Kylan Granson has his own role because he's a different type of tight end. But those other guys,
almost a wide receiver.
Yes, those other guys have to be careful about Will Mallory. Like he's going to come in, and he has taken advantage of every opportunity that he has gotten so far. And he's at that point, Mike, where like you give the player the opportunity, and if he keeps delivering, you have to keep him out there. If he's playing in such a way that he is not letting the coaches get him off the field, that spells some what's the word?
It's concern for the guys.
Concern is it's not the word I was thinking of, but it's close enough for those 2 other guys who are trying to work into their own roles as second-year players in the NFL too.
And it's going to be incumbent upon the coaching staff to put these guys in positions where you maximize what they do, and don't put Dallas Clark out there to block Mario Williams,
right?
Which the Colts have done before. So that's we were talking. Maybe Mo. No, Mo is a blocker. Mo is and I tell you, he had that one catch, and he looks for contact.
Yes,
he's like Michael Pittman. Who can I run into? But you've got to roll in. Mallory's probably a lot more like Kylan Granson as far as what he does, but he's not Granson because of the size and the speed. But
right.
You're right. You can't. You need a lot of these guys, but you can't have too many of them. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Ogletree, Jelani Woods, Mallory mix works out. Can you have those 3 and Kylan Granson as your 4 tight ends? Who's the blocker?
Right.
And that's maybe one of these guys develop into it, and maybe they don't.
Urgency was the word I was looking for, by the way. A sense of urgency among those guys. It finally came to me. I just stopped talking and let Chap go, and I had to think about it for a minute, but there it is right there. So like I said before this season, when the Colts kept like 5 tight ends or 6 tight ends on that first 53-man, like I want to see a 5 tight end set instead of a 5 wide receiver set. I want to see all the Colts tight ends on there at once because I like them all. I think they're all good players. I think they all can do some damage out there. They all have in their roles, which is what you ask them to do. So let's see. Let's move on here. Richardson, Ryan Kelly still in concussion protocol, not practicing as of Thursday. They have to go through that whole process to get on the field. Quentin Nelson still out there with his toe injury. Grover Stewart and Kenny Moore were limited in practice on Wednesday. You can find us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone to follow up with Colts news and notes, injury reports throughout the week as well. Chap.
One thing on injuries, I just urge people who listen to don't kind of go hyper on Wednesday and Thursday injuries. Just don't. I think Quentin's going to be.
He'll be fine.
Last week he was
similar.
Nothing on Wednesday, limited on Thursday, and he practiced on Friday. I think we're going to see him very limited, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But But for Friday's when you kind of get the idea of who's going to play and who maybe he's not going to play. So they put those out there for a reason, but just don't pay too much attention to Wednesday, Thursday. Kind of focus on Friday because that tells you everything.
I would love to have Quentin out there, Matt, because he has to get used to maybe a new center alongside him too. Like he's played with Ryan Kelly for a long time, but if he's going to play with Wesley French, it's going to be a little different out there. And against the Baltimore defensive front, where they're trying to blitz in a weird way, like every other play, it seems like this is like I would want him out there, but at the same time, like you don't push Quentin to be out there at the same time if his toe is hurt. Like you want him to be at his best on Sunday. That's the main thing. It would still just make me feel more comfortable if he was out there.
Well, and maybe that also plays into the calculation as to whether you put Anthony Richardson out there. You know, if Quentin's not able to go and Ryan Kelly's not able to go at center, maybe that's not the time you want your rookie quarterback out there either.
Some more roster notes. Arlington Hambright signed to the practice squad after being elevated to the practice squad after he was elevated to the 53-man roster.
Played a lot during the preseason.
He did, yeah, quite a bit. He was their swing tackle, really, or their backup left tackle.
And then he played guard.
Yeah, exactly. So then Dakota Shepley signed to the practice squad. He had been with the team during training camp, another guard.
That could be a Kelly
exactly.
insurance
Just
thing.
Insurance
That's
policy
kind of
there.
what I was thinking too.
Yep. And yeah. So news this week across the NFL before we get into our preview for next week. Definitely in line with our own Mike Chappell's expertise. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has announced nominees for the class of 2024. Our own Chap here, one of the voters for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In terms of Colts, there's a slew of names possible among the 173 nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis there, of course, as well as Jeff Saturday, Bob Sanders, Pat McAfee, and Mike Vanderjagt. Wayne and Freeney were among 15 finalists last year. Was Robert Mathis a finalist 2 years ago? No, he's never been a finalist. He's never made it quite that far in the process. But also among the 15 finalists last year who are nominated again are Jared Allen, Willie Anderson, Devin Hester, Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Patrick Willis, and Darren Woodson. So 9 guys back. They had 5 guys who were elected to the Hall of Fame. 1 player went through his 20 years of eligibility. He's out of the top 15, and those are the 9 total players who are back as who were finalists last year. Now, first timers. These are guys getting thrown in right away who have the possibility of being elected in their first year. You have wide receivers Brandon Marshall and Jordy Nelson, tight end Antonio Gates, running back Jamal Charles, offensive lineman TJ Lang, Josh Sitton, and Max Unger, defensive lineman Haloti Ngata, and Julius Peppers. Chap, you look at this list right here. It's not exactly murderer's row in a first-year group. There might be 1 or 2 that are given serious consideration as first-time electors to the Hall of Fame. But your first impressions on seeing this list and how guys like a Reggie Wayne, a Dwight Freeney, a Robert Mathis fall in there.
Well, I saw was that J.J. Watt came out and endorsed
Freeney. He gave Freeney a big endorsement.
He said, I can't believe he's not in there. Well,
yes.
Last year was his first time.
It was.
So, but, and Freeney didn't get in last year. I thought he had a chance after when we were having our discussions prior to our voting. But DeMarcus Ware, he's really good.
Yeah.
And hopefully that Dwight will get more push than the Julius Peppers, although they're both really, really good. The thing with Reggie, he's been a final 15 guy 4 years in a row. It's just right now we've got a logjam at receiver. It's Reggie, Andre Johnson, and Torrey Holt. And we've had long discussions.
You have the same discussion every year.
And it's like, I keep telling Reggie, I said, God, I wish you could give me another 1,000-yard season last year so I've got something else. But it's now, Andre Johnson, I could go on that.
You're on record.
Wait your turn. Torrey Holt and Reggie,
they're both 4 years.
Yes.
As they've been finalists.
They are both very similar. I could argue strongly for each one in different ways. Reggie, the longevity and all that. But we, as a group of 50, we have got to find a way to get one of these guys in this year, one of these guys in next year, and then the next guy. And if we do it by how we've done it, who's been waiting longer? Well, then Torrey Holt gets in next because he's been eligible a few more years than Reggie. I was livid last year when 2 years ago, when Andre Johnson leaped above both of them. That's just crazy. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the quarterbacks he's had throwing.
He just looks like a Hall of Famer, right, Chap?
Boy, I was really
a quote from another.
How many guys have we
elector
seen in the locker room? This looks like he should be a player. And
Mike Strawn looks like a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, well, there. So we'll see. Reggie will get in. He doesn't want to hear this. He will get in.
It's just painful to hear that because it was like Edge with the same thing. He was like 7 years as a finalist or something ridiculous.
And Edge was finally, he'd say, I'm tired of waiting. But then once you get in,
it doesn't matter.
No one cares.
Yeah.
But so we'll see. They'll get in. If I had to guess, if I had to just throw a dart, I think Freeney has a chance this year, a good chance.
Yeah.
And then one of the receivers, Torrey Holt, and then Reggie next year. But I'm pushing hard for Reggie this year because doggone, the numbers are just there.
Yeah.
And it's always the thing, well, he was on that team with Manning, and how can you have all these guys on a Hall of Fame from this team that only won one Super Bowl? That's garbage. So hopefully they get in. And one other thing is 173 names. And if you look at the names, you're going to think, Hall of Fame?
Some of them are not.
Well, but the thing is, anybody, I could have named, and this isn't a dig, I could have named Ryan Dean. And his name would be on the list.
Right.
So you put anybody on, and then we cut it to 25, and then you get the riffraff out of the bar. and then we cut it to 15 that we vote on in January. So, but people shouldn't get bent out of shape that this guy or that guy's on the list of 173 because you just have to have your name nominated to be on there.
Now, Matt, you watched the Colts obviously growing up too as a Colts fan. Like these are guys that are near and dear to your heart. But of those guys, Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, if you could pick one of them to go into the Hall of Fame, I'm curious who you would take.
I'm probably just going to go Reggie.
Yeah.
I loved watching Reggie play, and he meant so much to the franchise because not that the other guys didn't. I'm not saying that, but when they kind of cleaned house after they got rid of Manning and they drafted Andrew Luck, they kept Reggie around, and he wasn't just kind of this piece that they had that stayed. He was a productive player for them, and he helped them have success on the field, and I will always remember him for that.
They knew his value to Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was because go back and remember, it was either re-sign Reggie or Pierre Garçon. Well, Pierre had the upside.
Yeah.
He was younger, and he had some pretty good years with Washington?
Right, yeah.
But Reggie, he was security blanket is not the right word because doesn't give him his due, but they knew Reggie's value to the rookie quarterback. He'd be there where he's supposed to be, when he was supposed to be. And remember, and Reggie's talked about, he went to Luck and said, you take care of your business, I'll take care of the offense. It'll be my offense, and when you're ready, you come to me. That's just invaluable.
Yeah.
So he sort of bridged those two eras of Colts football, and for that reason, special place in my heart and a lot of fans. So that's why I'd like to see him get in.
I'll explain a couple of these first-timers that I think have a chance. I think the two that have the biggest chance are Julius Peppers at defensive end and Antonio Gates at tight end. I mean, those are the two names that jump off the page to me. Peppers has the 4th most sacks all time. But so the question is going to come to the selectors, to you, Chap, and everyone else. Is it enough to leapfrog guys like Freeney, Mathis, and Jared Allen, who have been waiting there, especially Freeney and Allen, who were finalists last year? And with Antonio Gates, like he has the most touchdowns for a tight end all time. The most touchdowns. That's what you do. Like you're supposed to score. And he has scored more than any other tight end in history, and he's top 3 in both catches and yards. So I think there will be some serious discussions to put both of those two in their first year. It could be also, like I said, Chap, in the get in line, if it's not quite enough to put them over the top as quote-unquote first-time selections to the Hall of Fame. Maybe there's some movement to put Gates in line behind the wide receivers or with the wide receivers. But that's the discussion you're going to have in a couple months.
He was probably maybe the first that he wasn't really the hybrid. I don't think he was more of a tight end. He wasn't like at a lesser level.
But he was tilting that way, I
think.
Right.
So do you throw him in as receivers? With these guys now, with the Kelseys and all these guys, they're darn near receivers. And it's funny when contract time comes up, these guys want to be considered receivers,
right?
Not tight ends,
right?
So, but it'll be interesting. I think by and large, unless a guy is, you mention his name, Peyton Manning, and then you sit down, that's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Right.
It just is. The thing that I've argued is we've been a little liberal with first ballot guys. I don't mean DeMarcus Ware, but there's 2 or 3 guys that I still think maybe they are a Hall of Famer, but they're certainly not first ballot. I just think that you just have to check every box to be a first ballot guy, and I don't see those guys here. And Julius Peppers was a stud
for a long time.
He was. It just depends on what your flavor is, and we're going to meet for the first time in person in 4 or 5 years. Since COVID.
Yeah.
and it's a little better. We're going to have 50 of us in the room, and whether we're going to, I don't know where we're going to meet, Dallas or wherever we're going to meet, not Super Bowl, but it's really interesting, the process, because when we're done and we announce the 5 and all this, people say, well, I can't believe this guy didn't get in. Mm-hmm. Well, who'd you want to leave out? Well, I don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
You get
5 a year.
You get 5. You get 5. So, but it'll be interesting. And like with Edge, with Reggie, you just keep knocking on the door. And one of these days, I remember when Edge finally got in, they always call you that you got in or you didn't get in. They try to let you know right away. And Edge, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, he gets a call that, well, sorry, you didn't get in. The year he got in, he almost didn't answer the phone. He was sleeping.
Yep.
So, you've always got to sort of, maybe this is a year. Reggie is getting frustrated, I know, because he knows, he just knows that you've got to kind of wait your turn and all that. But
right.
Hopefully this is a year for he and Freeney.
It's frustrating because you've already done everything you can do. There's
what
nothing
new
more
angle
you can do.
What's my new angle? I don't know.
And as a guy like that, a guy who was a competitor in the NFL for 14, 15
right.
years, you're used to trying to control so much and control what you can, and now it's completely out of your control.
Right.
So I get why it's frustrating, but like you said, you really have a strong inclination that it's going to happen eventually. Hopefully this year for Reg. Many Colts fans believe, and we'll see about Syracuse legend Dwight Freeney as well.
I think definitely worthy of getting in there too.
For sure. And one of the bad downsides of this is with Freeney is he's totally overshadowing Robert Mathis,
right?
Who by the way is the franchise sack leader
and the NFL's all-time strip sack leader.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's like, oh yeah, Robert Mathis. No, Robert Mathis.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to kind of get these guys out of the way. Get Reggie out of the way. Get Torrey Holt out of the way. One of them, and you got to get Dwight out of the way so that Robert can.
Right.
Didn't get his name up there.
All those things. All right. Let's move on to week 3 in the NFL as the Colts travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Game will be broadcast at 1 o'clock. If you're in Central Indiana, that'll be on CBS 4. 15th matchup all time between these two teams. Colts hold the 8-6 series advantage. The last time they met was 2021 when the Colts had a big lead in the fourth quarter and just could not stop Lamar Jackson.
Mark Andrews.
It was Mark Andrews. It was driving down the field, touchdown, 2-point conversion. It was driving down the field, touchdown, 2-point conversion.
Stop one of them.
You couldn't stop anything.
One play.
Yep. Like you asked the offense to hopefully give you something there. I get that, but the defense did nothing. Could not stop them on one play, and it wasn't like there were big plays.
Was
they
it
had.
22-3? What was it?
It was something ludicrous. In the second half, it might have been 22-3. Yes, and then the final score was 31-25 on a Monday Night Football game there in Baltimore. The Ravens this year are 2-0. They are in first place in the AFC North. They beat the Texans just like the Colts did. Final score was 25-9. That was at home. Then they went to Cincinnati and beat the Bengals on the road 27-24 there in week 2 to stay undefeated on the season. Lamar Jackson is the engine that makes the offense go. He's completing nearly 75% of his passes. Pretty good for a running back, right? And has thrown for 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, has 18 rushes for 92 yards, averaging 5.1 yards per carry to the team's second leading rush. So, Chap, these are not MVP caliber numbers from Jackson yet, but he is doing enough, and he's being efficient with the football. Like I said, 75% completions is really, really good. So you figure, if I'm looking at his numbers, I figure bigger plays are out there for him. You just hope that doesn't come against your team. You're going to try to make sure that you still don't give him those big opportunities to make big plays. Because even like we were talking to Shaquille Leonard in the locker room today. I asked him just about the challenge of facing a guy where it's 6, 7, 8 seconds in coverage. You still have to be in coverage because Lamar could be running back and forth. It's not like the defensive line is going to get him after 6 or 7 seconds. He could keep going. He could be running around everyone and still looking downfield trying to make a play. It is a unique challenge that the Colts are going to face in trying to stop him this weekend.
With all these quarterbacks like this, and there's more and more of them, is they just beat the defense. You can have the perfect defense. You can play the perfect defense for 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and then he's out the back door, and it's got to be just deflating. And, again, go back to that game where they blew the big lead. He just made plays.
Yep.
The Colts didn't stop him, but he kept making plays. So I think one thing that will benefit a little bit for the defense is they have faced this kind of guy in the offseason and in training camp with Richardson. It's not to say it's the same type of guy, what he can do on with his legs and all this. So, But it's frustrating when you can have the perfect defense called and executed, and he beats it because he's that much better.
Mm-hmm. Matt, they have a new offense this year. I think they let their offensive coordinator go in the offseason. They have a new one, and it's a slightly different offense that we've seen from them in the past. He was actually under center quite a bit, as you noted here this last week against the Bengals in your preview that you put together for us.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking through some stuff, trying to do a little bit of a scouting report on the other team and stuff.
Scouting report with Matt Adams.
He was on under center for 23% of his, for 16 plays, 23% of his plays in their game against the Bengals, and then for his career or for last season, he was only under center for 11.5% of snaps, and that's a pretty significant diffence there. It means
that's double.
They're not always doing the shotgun or pistol read option stuff that they're kind of known for.
Yeah, they have a wide receiver, a rookie, who our former producer here, Joe Hopkins, was really high on in the preseason in the draft process. It was Zay Flowers out of Boston College, and through 2 games, He's looked pretty good. He has 13 catches, 140 yards. 3 of those catches are for 20 yards or more. And we have seen a couple of good performances from wide receivers against the Colts so far, Chap. So once again, it looks like that secondary is going to be put to the test by not only this rookie, Odell Beckham Jr., if he can play, if he is healthy enough to play. Tight end Mark Andrews, who has beaten them to death, as you showed in the past.
He had, was it 147 yards that game?
I don't even remember. It was a lot.
But it was the most. It's the second most against the franchise, the most in the Indy era. So, and that was back when tight ends just torched them.
Yeah, I couldn't quite bring myself to look up the box score on that one.
You just couldn't do it.
Just the memory of losing the game in overtime was enough.
A unique thing about Baltimore is they're a team that has come up, at least in trade discussion, well, not trade discussions, in trade rumors, I should say, or teams that other people, like national prognosticators, could think are interested in trading for Jonathan Taylor because their starting running back, J.K. Dobbins, is out for the season after tearing his Achilles in Week 1. In his place, it's been a running back duo of Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Gus Edwards, the more productive of the two so far, is 18 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. And those two running backs split carries in Week 2 against the Bengals. So, Matt, Chap and I were discussing this kind of on the way over here today. We were saying that there's no rush, I don't think, for Baltimore in trying to trade even if they want to trade for Jonathan Taylor, because they have 2 guys now that they're just kind of feeling out. They're seeing how they work in the offense. And this is something with other teams could be too, early in the season, trying to go through 3 or 4 weeks, seeing who you have on your roster, seeing exactly how much you could really benefit from another running back. So, hey, if you want Jonathan Taylor to be traded, root for the Colts to stop the run game today, because you're trying to show Baltimore that they need a different running back.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I know that there were a lot of we saw what happened, unfortunately, to Nick Chubb, for Cleveland, and then there was a lot of that heat, not from local guys or anything, but just from the local people. Well, hey, Jonathan Taylor's available here. Maybe they'll go and trade for him. They went out and got Kareem Hunt, who has been a guy who had worked out, I believe, with the Colts. And then you've got kind of the same thing here with Baltimore, that sort of that heat from the national people that, maybe they'll trade for Jonathan Taylor now. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, they could trade him to Baltimore and leave him in Baltimore.
You just leave him there.
But he's not going to make the trip.
So that's the problem. He's not going to go with them. Yeah.
Which we could do an entire
send him on a Mayflower to Baltimore.
About why isn't he around the franchise, for crying out loud? Taylor on the road for games, I don't care. But he wasn't there.
Wasn't there at the home opener. Wasn't there on the sideline.
He, from everything we've been told, he does his workout, he does his rehab, which you put a little clip out there last.
He did. One little clip shows that he's out there. Yep. He's working out.
And then he leaves. I mean, so then in 2 weeks you just say, okay, come on back, and we're kumbaya. So in 2 weeks, hopefully, this is decided.
Shane Steichen also was asked this week about Jonathan Taylor.
How tired of it is that?
I can't imagine.
I feel for him in some sense, and then the other sense I don't feel for him, because that's his job.
This is your job.
Exactly. You got to answer the tough questions. You're the head coach now. You're not the offensive coordinator anymore. You're not a wide receivers coach. You're the head job. You're the guy who's speaking as kind of the face of the franchise, or the voice of the franchise.
Correct.
Every week. It's not Chris Ballard who's out there. I'd talk to Chris. If it was Jim Irsay, we'd talk to Jim. But it's you, Shane. So you're the guy who's kind of in charge that we get to ask about it. And he said basically, I know you guys have a job to do, but I'm going to refrain from answering any questions about Jonathan Taylor.
We look to get him back.
Yeah, we look to get him back. We're something like that. So, but I'm sure questions will keep coming, especially if Taylor keeps posting videos.
And the one thing we were talking in the media room, and fans probably don't care, But at some point after whatever weeks, and we could take this back to training camp with Shane Steichen, is you get to know what he's going to talk about and what he's not going to talk about. Yeah. You just know.
Yep.
Because he deflects or just doesn't answer. But you still have to ask the question.
Right.
You just do. And it's not being, I think Taylor was brought up 2 or 3 times on Wednesday. And when he says what he says, okay, now if you want to be really snarky, you ask 3 or 4 more follow-ups.
Right.
Which
it's
serves no purpose. It's putting you in the spotlight. But you have to ask the question because I've been around long enough. The one day you don't ask a question, something happens, and then the next day they say, well, you didn't ask me.
Right.
So, but it's, for a lot of reasons, this needs to be resolved in 2 or 3 weeks. Will it be? I don't know. But please, let's get this thing over with so we're not always going down that rabbit hole of right now there's no information.
Yeah, back to the game itself. The Colts will be facing a Baltimore defense that is historically one of the toughest to play in the NFL. They have a scheme that under Wink Martindale for years, who's now with the Giants, was one of the most creative in terms of what they do with their front seven and try to confuse the opposing quarterback, which, like I said earlier, would be a great test for Anthony Richardson if he can be out there. But either way, it'll be a good test for Gardner Minshew, too. He'll have to be on his P's and Q's and try to decipher what they're doing before the snap so that he can have the best idea of what he wants to do after the snap with the ball. They have a couple really good linebackers in Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. Defensive back Brandon Stevens also has had a pretty solid season so far, but they do have some injuries. Safety Marcus Williams, I don't know if they're going to happen for the season with a pectoral injury. Marlon Humphrey, their star cornerback, has been out with a foot injury. So there's a lot of guys that could be missing this week for Baltimore as they try to get ready for the Colts. So I mean, if you, and that's something, Chap, if you have a bunch of backups coming in a non-vanilla scheme, in a unique scheme, like there's the more of the opportunity for mistakes or breakdowns to happen. Then you need the offense that needs to be able to see those mistakes and capitalize on them.
And an Anthony Richardson offense has a chance to do that. How much will they give Gardner Minshew a chance to do that?
It's a good question.
It is so hard in any game to think you're going to go 10, 12 plays. Against Baltimore, it's really hard. Yeah. Peyton, you always used to say that when you played Baltimore, it was going to be ugly because they were going to win a lot of plays, but there were going to be times. And when it was there, you had to strike.
You have to strike.
And how many times will the Colts think they have that they'll take the risk? Because that generally is not Gardner Minshew. It's not. And it's not. It's just who he is. It's not that it's a knock on him. It's who he is. What was it they said to the guys at the game on Sunday that when Richardson went out, that Steichen said, "Now listen, we're going to run the read option, or the run whatever, and the run's not part of it. You're not going to be running it, but it's going to be a different game plan. It will be because they're different quarterbacks. So I'm curious how much reins they take off of Minshew when they don't want mistakes in a game that's going to be tough anyway."
Yeah, some notes from this matchup. Baltimore has nearly double the explosive plays the Colts have. Colts have 5, Baltimore has 9, and they've kind of split between their passing and run game. Colts haven't had a 20-plus yard play in the run game all year in 2 games.
Was it 18? Is that?
Yeah, it was close.
Richardson's?
Close.
It was
very
so close. Richardson could have gone more than 18 yards, it looked like.
He would have run for 100.
Exactly. Yeah, he might have.
Could you imagine? I was sitting there watching that game. The type of game he might have had had he stayed healthy.
I tweeted out after that second touchdown, I was like, he's going to have some monster fantasy games this year, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's out of the game. But like he looked like he was in complete control. So I look forward to seeing what he does against Houston at home in a couple weeks, whenever they face Houston later on this season, because that defense looked like it had no answer for him at all.
It's like they didn't even know he could actually run the ball.
Quarterbacks can do that, yeah. And with D'Amico Ryan's defense, that was not what I expected at all. The offensive ranks, the Colts are 13th in the league. Ravens are 19th, so neither of them great passing yards so far for this year. On the run game, the Ravens are 6th in the league, so they're one of the better run teams in the league. Colts still down there at 20th, and that climb up after week 1 where they were one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams.
29th or whatever.
Yeah, they were way down there after that suboptimal week 1. So you hope for more of that, what they saw in week 2. But without Richardson, you're not going to get that boost either that he gave them for the first couple drives. Scoring offense, they both have scored 26 points per game on average. They are tied in the NFL at 10th. Defensive ranks, the Colts are near the bottom in terms of yards allowed per game. In passing, they're nearly allowing 290 yards passing per game. Ravens are middle of the pack, right around 200 yards per game. The rushing game, that's the Colts' strength on rush defense. They're allowing less than 80 yards per game. They lead the NFL in fewest yards per rush right now. They're allowing 2.6 yards per rush. That speaks to Buckner and Grover up the middle right now. Yeah.
And what's amazing is they gave up, wasn't it that garbage 26-yarder against Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which, I mean, you know, they take that out. Well, that's 2.6 with that on a short sample size. So they've been stout against the run, and that needs to be there all year. And, again, when you have a quarterback like Jackson, he's really going to stress your run defense.
And the Ravens have also been really good against the run. They are actually sixth. They're one spot above the Colts in rush defense. They're averaging only 69 yards given up per game, but a whole yard more per carry, like 3.6 yards per carry. Teams just are running more against the Colts. And just not gaining any yards because Jacksonville's trying to run out the clock. Oh no. I don't know why they're quite so much. But anyway, we'll see what happens in this game. Both have gotten after the quarterback reasonably. Colts have 8 sacks in 2 games. Ravens have 6. Scoring defense, Ravens are allowing only 16 points per game. That helps out with the 9 points allowed against Houston in Week 1. Colts 19th in the NFL, allowing 25.5 points per game. So those are our offensive and defensive notes as we get into to Week 3. The biggest question, of course, is who's going to start. We're not going to know that until Saturday afternoon, if not Sunday morning.
We may not know.
Not Sunday.
Yeah. Yes, because he might not be cleared until Sunday morning. And once he's cleared, then you make the decision. The decision. Also, who's going to play in front of him? Will Quentin Nelson play? Probably. Will Ryan Kelly play?
Yeah.
Chap says already yes for Quentin Nelson. Like no chance.
I saw him in the locker room. There wasn't bone sticking out of his foot.
Right.
So
he'll be good.
So you figure he's going to be okay. Will Zach Moss do what he did last week? Will anybody spell him at all in Baltimore?
And if they do, who?
Yeah. Who will it be?
You know, who's it? Trevor Sermon they signed?
Trey Sermon. Yes. Ohio State product out of he was in Philly in the preseason.
They want a backs by committee, but you need a committee,
right?
That you trust.
The committee right now.
It's a committee of one right now.
Yeah, that's about all you get. So that'll bring us to our predictions for this week. The Ravens are favored by 7.5 points right now. The over/under is set at about 46. So the boys in Vegas expecting a 26-19 ball game right around there. In Baltimore between these two teams. I'll start off with my prediction. We'll go to Matt and then Chap to wrap things up. I think this is a tough test, and especially if Richardson doesn't play. Gardner Minshew against the Ravens, I don't think that you can consistently go 10 plays for points. Like, you might be able to do that a couple times, or the defense could get you a couple sudden change opportunities to get you points. But if you're,
and the kicker better be on point because points are going to be at a premium.
At a premium, I think. So at that, and all that to say, I think the Ravens have another gear. Lamar Jackson specifically that he hasn't really hit yet this year. He's getting better by the week, I would think, in the new offensive system that they have there. So testing against the Colts secondary, which did not look great last week against rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins at wide receiver, for crying out loud. I think that Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham and Mark Andrews is a step up from that competition. Lamar Jackson is obviously a step up from that competition. That offense is going to be pretty good, I think, for the Ravens. I think that Baltimore wins this game. I'll go with 27-16. I think that they control things. That the Colts just they don't have the firepower to keep up, especially if Richardson is not in the game and Lamar is able to do a little bit more of what we've seen from him before. So Matt will go next, and then Chap to wrap things up.
Pretty close to your thoughts on that. Tough environment to play. It's going to be a good defense. I know that the Colts defense will probably play well, but I think they will give up some plays in the secondary because that's what we've seen from them. I'm going to go 27-13 Ravens in this one.
That's some of the trouble of saying that the Colts the front can have a good game. They can, like we've said before on this podcast, you can play 65 snaps, and if the offensive lineman whiffs on 3 of those, then it's a bad game for the offense. Right. Same with the defensive lineman. If they have 3 great snaps, then it could be a tremendous game for them. But those other 60 whatever snaps, I think the Colts defensive line could have a good game.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if Lamar Jackson is protected for 61 of 65 snaps, then that secondary, I think, is going to be really under siege. Chap, what do you think?
Yeah, the only bad thing about me going last is
We took all the info?
No, the score.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wrote down 27-13 or 27-13.
Hey.
Because Joe used to get on me about picking the same score as him, so I write it down.
I do not
And
care.
then you'd still pick the same score as Joe.
Right. I just think it's going to be a tough game offensively. I think the defense will hold up for a while, maybe into the third quarter. But then at some point, the stress will get to you where the offense is either getting a 45-yard field goal from Matt Gay and not much else. I just think Minshew's – you need to find ways to get the ball downfield occasionally against a defense like this. And it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be a tough day offensively, and the defense is just going to be up just enough bad. Like you say, 3 or 4 plays and the game's over. So 27-13, I guess I would – side with Vegas on this.
Yeah. So that's what it looks like from our perspective. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone once again throughout the week for injury news and notes, anything that might have to do with leading up to the game. Mike's work is online at fox59.com or cbs4indy.com, whichever you might prefer for your viewing pleasure. And you can follow us all on Twitter. Matt Adams is at Statamatty. Mike is at mchappell51. I am at DaveG_sports. We appreciate you listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast, and we'll see you next week after week 3 leading into week 4 of this NFL season. Take care, everyone.